Ghost in the Shell is one of the most beautiful PlayStation 1 games I think I've ever played on the platform. The soundtrack is truly amazing, the cyberpunk anime vibes are really incredible, and I will never, ever touch it again. Let me tell you why. To start, Ghost in the Shell on PS1 is a game that came out in 1997, wherein you play a little red spider tank called Fuchikoma. And that's about as much as I can tell you about the plot. The game plays out in 12 distinctively frustrating stages that culminate in a final level boss fight that looks cool but is ultimately frustrating to the very end, but we'll get into all that in a bit. And hey, if you're new to the channel, hit that old subscribe button and let's get into it. So before I start my critique, I want to preface this entire thing with some good, because I do like being positive. The game looks incredible. I mean, you can see it on screen right now. And I don't mean incredible in that pre-rendered background among 3D models kind of thing that the PS1 is known for. I mean it is rendering all the stuff in real time. And honestly, it's a technical achievement for an early PS1 game. As in, like, it is technically impressive. And honestly, I know I mentioned the non-existent plot earlier, but it really is a shame that such an unimportant plot is presented with such gorgeous animated cutscenes. I mean, take a look at this cutscene that you're seeing right now. And tell me that that doesn't look like it was ripped straight from an episode of Ghost in the Shell.
And there's every reason to believe that that's what they came for.
Excuse me, sir, but the AI unit reported that a tank broke down and it'll take 4 hours to repair.
The game's plot does make you feel like you're the rookie, as they call you, working under Section 9, and that's genuinely a cool setup for a game.
Terrorist activity is reported throughout Newport City. Take out the target and secure every block, then we'll infiltrate.
That's crazy. Why don't we let City Special Forces take care of that?
And another plus, the basic movement controls feel tight. You never feel like you're floating around too much or you're too heavy to zoom from place to place, and you will feel that sense of autonomy when you play it. If I could compare it to anything, though, it'd be something like Cyber Sled or Armored Core. The way that you can slide left and right, zoom forward, that kind of thing, that feels very quintessential early PS1. The tank has weight, never feels sluggish, and strafing really does feel good. The gimmick of clinging onto walls and ceilings is honestly kind of a technical marvel in itself that the game, unfortunately, rarely ever opts to take advantage of until the final level, but we'll get to that. But let's talk about that soundtrack, though. You've been listening to it this whole time, actually. I've had it in the background. But take a listen to this and tell me that this is not just peak 90s. So, what happened, I hear you ask? You say you'll never play it again, but you open with such glowing positivity. Well, here's my most controversial take, and it sits here because I didn't want to talk about it until now, but it's something I don't see reflected in just about any review I've watched on this. There's no instructions. At all. There is actually no instructions. There is an included training mode, but it doesn't actually do a good job of training you. In fact, when it drops you in, you have no idea what to do. You just have to sort of fly by the seat of your pants. And while that kind of training might fly over at Section 9, it doesn't fly over here on Kale Arcade.
You'll have to prove to us that you've got some guts.
See, the game expects you to have a physical manual. I don't know if you've seen the price of a physical copy of this game, but yeah. In 2026, someone checking this game out for the first time, either emulated or through legal means, either way, they're not gonna hunt down a PDF of this game's manual. I'm sorry.
Why didn't you say so earlier?
And I can already hear some people say it now. That's just how retro games were. You're not a true retro gamer. No, even disregarding the manual, like I said, the average person expects some kind of easing in with most games. A kind of tutorial, or barring that, a decent checkpoint system, of which this game has neither. So let's talk about that movement from earlier, because the basic controls of moving around, you know, that movement that should be able to carry you through combat once you've acclimated yourself to it, well, doesn't quite hold up when you add combat into the mix. Your combat abilities are divided among 3 different weapons. You have a Gatling gun, which can be used by mashing the square button. You have incredibly hard-to-find grenades, and you have an incredibly frustrating missile system. And we're going to talk about that right now, because almost every complaint I'm going to have going forward stems from this one mechanic.
Roger. Bateau, Togusa, did you hear that?
See, to use the missile, you have to hold down the square button, and in most instances where you have a mechanic like this, your natural instinct is to just hold the square button down until you're ready to use it. Ho, not in this game though. No, I'm sorry, did you hold the missile button down a little too long? I'm sorry, all of your saved up energy is going to be spun down. And to punish you for this, we're also going to make it take 1.5 seconds for you to actually be able to fire those missiles again. Oh, and to punish you for even getting hit while you're trying to time these missiles, we're going to go on ahead and just put that down to 0 and take all your missiles away too. Oh, and also we will also make it take 1.5 seconds for you to fire again. Honestly, a mechanic like this just means that I'm just going to take the path of least resistance and I'm just going to mash square. And through most of the game, you can actually get away with that, as most of the time the missiles don't even do that much more damage than just rapidly pressing square. To make matters worse, there's no quick turn. So you're rotating the Fuchikama like you're piloting a tank. And I guess that's the point, but in a game where flawless movement is otherwise the default, you expect to be able to quickly turn around in those on-rails segments. So, you know what you do? You just stop trying. You just stop timing things. You just try to get through the levels as quickly as possible with taking the least amount of damage possible. But you know what that leads to? That leads to you having to retry the level again and again and again until you get it right. And let's say you do manage to get through these levels, which they are relatively short, I will give them that. If the boss beats you in that level, guess where you get to start? All the way back at the beginning, as this game features 0 checkpoints. And finishing up this talk about the level design here, let's say it took you like 6 hours of playing to get here, all the while doing, this sort of on-rails shooting segments that the game eventually devolves into. At no point in the game have you done any platforming. There's not a single segment in the entire game up to this point that you've done that has required any level of skill in platforming. You'll never guess what the final level is. That's right, it's a platforming segment. In fact, it has several platforming segments. And while I do appreciate the use of the ability to climb around like on walls and on ceilings, and you don't know what's up and what's down, which I think is really cool, by the way. Having a platforming segment at the end of your game that has featured no platforming up to this point and has, as far as I can tell, some of the worst platforming I've ever experienced. Granted, I will tell you that I've never played Jumping Flash or Jumping Flash 2. I imagine they're far better games because the mechanics were built around that. The mechanics do not feel like they were built around platforming for Fuchikama, but I digress. And having to do a ton of leap of faith jumps, yeah, I bounced. Yeah, I'm not afraid to admit it. I'm not going to put up with that. While you get a really cool cutscene at the very end, honestly, it wasn't worth the effort of trying to get through the stage, only to then die and be sent back to the beginning and then forced to do the platforming again. Like, I feel like this has already come across, but the trial and error nature of this game, the tedium of having to redo the entire level if you die to a boss, or the aforementioned platforming segments, and having to keep track of so much distracting you while you're trying to pilot this thing and time your missiles correctly, it just makes the whole game drag on much longer than it needs to. Despite the levels being really short, and despite the fact that the enemies do go down relatively quickly, the on-rails segments just aren't fun, and with the idea that this game was going to get better by the end, that initial honeymoon phase exists to introduce and familiarize you, the player, with the mechanics long enough that a game can feel comfortable adding more to the controls, with the understanding that the basics can carry you through most of the game. Ghost in the Shell, however, never does that. It never establishes that baseline sense of mastery that the controls to give you the confidence you need in beating the rest of the game assures you in most other games. It just asks you to suffer through until it clicks, and honestly, it never clicks enough to be worth it, in my opinion. Simply put, this game just required a level of patience and understanding that I just wasn't willing to put up with, and I don't think you should have to put up with it either.
So they want to liberate us, huh?
So with that, what did y'all think when you played this game? Was this legitimately fun for you, or was it a mess of a game like it was for me? I guess it'll all depend on your patience. And hey, if you've had the patience to make it through to the end of this video, you're awesome, and I'm hoping to see y'all in the next one. Keep it classic, y'all.